Hi, I'm Jason, and I'm going to show you how you can transform a room with beautiful barnwood accent planks. Alright, I'm in the shop today to liven up my office with a barnwood accent wall. I'm going to show you the materials I use, the tools I use, the wall prep technique, and how I go about installing this stuff. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video so you can see the finished product. Alright, let's get to it.
So the first thing we're going to do here is take a utility knife and some 15-pound roofing felt paper, and we're going to cover up the entire wall surface. The reason we do this is to create a shadow or a backdrop for if any boards have gaps in them or any knot holes. And I'm using a hammer tacker, which is basically a staple gun, except you swing it like a hammer to put the staples in. If you don't have one of these, you can just use a regular staple gun. This is one of two install methods for barnwood, the other being going over existing drywall. And if you were to install this over existing drywall, you would want to paint the wall black or a dark brown to achieve the same result as the felt paper. Alright, the next step is to install the door casing using a Senko finish nailer. And this is going to provide a terminating point around the door for the barnwood planks, and also to give it a little bit of color contrast because we're going to be using a mostly gray material on the wall. Very rarely do you get straight barnwood, so I just picked out the straightest pieces I could find and did my best to get a consistent reveal around the door jamb. And then here I'm just topping it off with the header piece. So one of the reasons I didn't install the felt paper on the entire wall all at once is because obviously I had all of these things in the office up against the wall. And the other was because this footage was shot over the period of a few days. I wanted to point out right now too that if you're doing this from scratch, like in a new construction home, that I highly recommend putting up OSB plywood as your backer in the felt paper method, primarily because it just gives you so much holding power when you start actually installing the planks. But obviously that's user preference and you have to work with what you have. Another reason I like this method instead of going over drywall is because it's cleaner. If you're going over drywall, to get the holding power on the wall, you're going to want to put a construction adhesive as well as pin nailing it to the wall. I've seen guys just use the pin nailers over drywall and it seems to have worked fine for them. But if you combine it with construction adhesive, you shouldn't have any problems with planks coming off the wall. And the pin nails simply are holding it on there till the construction adhesive sets up. Alright, in this section of the video I pulled out my trusty 4-foot ladder. Another one of the simple tools required for this job, so I can reach the upper portion of the wall. Once I've finished stapling and trimming the end up here, we can get some barnwood in here and start installing planks. The material we are going to install here is reclaimed wood from barns, feedlots, corral boards, and fences. And I custom mill it here in the shop, and we're going to install 3-inch and 5-inch widths. So this bottom course is the most important, to get it as level as I possibly can. That way as I move up the wall, when I get to the top, I'll have a nice consistent rip piece at the top. And 3 new tools have appeared on the scene here: the level, a Senko pin nailer or brad nailer, and tape measure. I like to stagger the seams as I work up the wall. I try to have at least 4 or 5 rows with no matching seams to create a random, inconsistent pattern. What we are shooting for here is perfectly imperfect. This is one project where inconsistency definitely shines through in the end, and that's what makes this one a fun one as well. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it actually looks its best when it's not. If I have some really off color or bad boards, I will set them aside. Otherwise, I use the bulk of the material. About halfway up the wall is when I start double checking every 2 or 3 rows that I'm maintaining the same measurement to make sure that final top row is the same width rip. I'm also installing the 2 different widths of material in a random pattern vertically as well. Obviously I have to finish the row with what I started with, But this is random as well, so I might do one row of 5-inch, a couple rows of 3-inch, 3 rows of 5-inch, 2 rows of 3-inch. You get the idea. At this point, there isn't a whole lot of cutting, other than using the miter saw, except when I get up to the switches here, which I'm using a jigsaw for. And you notice that the piece I installed around the switch there, it had been broken, but it's still usable. I just continue working my way up the wall here towards the ceiling on the right-hand side of the wall. I'm going to have to hop over to the other side of the door to bring the pattern up the left side of the door, and then I can carry the row that goes over the door over onto that pattern. And since I'm on the shorter side of the spectrum, I'm going to have to get out the trusty 4-foot ladder here shortly. And there it is. So here I'm working my way over to the door. I've only got a few more pieces here to install, and then I need to hop over to the left side so I can continue this pattern up and carry that row across the top of the door. I want to point out here too that I'm using a miter saw to make all of these cuts, as well as a table saw that are through that door out in the shop. I didn't share that footage because I thought it would bore you guys. And if you don't have either of those tools, you can certainly use a jigsaw to get that job done. That's what I used for this piece. Alright, let's hop over to the other side and I'll show you what I do to get that going. I have to use the exact same pattern that's on the right. That way when I get to the top and carry the row across, it all lines up properly. So what I'm doing here is counting how many of each size I need. That way I don't spend a lot of time going back and forth cutting the boards. And since I wrote this all down on the list, I don't have to look behind my shoulder to mimic the pattern. I can just copy what I wrote down on the list and just run up the left side of the door. A crucial step at this point is to continually measure the left side compared to the right side. So once I reach the top, I have a nice smooth transition with that row that's going to go across the top. This is always a fun part of the project because you can start to see what it looks like in relation to the door casings, the color variations, and the colors just seem to pop off the wall. And it's always pleasing and satisfying to know that I'm creating something. So this is the last piece that I have to cut around. And you see me measuring here again. And it fits quite well. So now when I carry that row to the right of me over the top, I have a nice smooth transition. And since I took the time to measure as I was working, these top pieces are relatively the same width. And I'm cutting these on the table saw. If you don't have a table saw, you can certainly do this with the jigsaw as well. And here is the final piece being installed. What I'm going to do next is put the finishing touches on with the switch and outlet covers. And then we can take a step back and see the final completed project. And the transformation is complete.
Thanks for watching the video today. I showed you the materials I use, how to prep the wall, the tools I use, as well as how I go about installing this stuff. Hopefully this will give you the confidence to go out and tackle this project yourself. If you found value in today's video, please like and hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions or concerns, leave me a comment in the comments section. I make sure to read all of them. And remember, dream big, be positive, inspire others, and get out there and make something today. I'll see you on the next one.